She married a human for peace. Then he unleashed a strength no alien had ever seen. The war between humans and the Veleri Empire had lasted 7 long years. No side had won. No side had truly lost. Entire systems were empty now, their cities turned to dust. Inside the Grand Council Hall, the Veleri leaders stood in a wide circle. Their bodies were tall and silver-skinned, their eyes dark and sharp. They were known across the galaxy for logic and order. Yet today, fear moved through them like cold air. The humans had survived every battle. Even when outmatched, they kept fighting. Even when wounded, they returned. Veleri commanders did not understand it. Other species broke when hope was gone. Humans did not. High Counselor Versh spoke first. His voice echoed softly. The war cannot continue. Our fleets are tired. Our people are afraid. The humans will not stop and we cannot crush them. Another counselor replied. Then we destroy their home worlds, end them fully. Versh turned slowly. That would cost us everything. Humans fight harder when cornered. Their history proves this. Silence followed. Then a final voice spoke, calm and female. There is another path. All eyes turned to Lyra Vesh. Lyra stood straight, her long dark robe simple and clean. She was younger than most counselors, but her mind was respected. She had studied human culture more than any other Veleri. Speak, Lyra Vesh, Versh said. Lyra took a slow breath. The humans value bonds, family, partnership, symbols. If we bind peace with a union, they will respect it. Murmurs spread through the hall. A union, another counselor said. You mean marriage? Yes, Lyra said. A political marriage. One Veleri. One human. The council froze. That is barbaric, one said. That is dangerous, another said. Lyra did not move. Humans already believe we see them as monsters. This will show trust. It will show we do not fear them. Versh studied her. And who would be offered? Lyra felt the weight settle on her chest. I will. The silence became heavy. You would bind yourself to a human male, Versh asked. Yes. Why, another asked? Because someone must. Because peace needs sacrifice. Because if we fail, billions more will die. The council spoke in low tones. Logic battled fear. Pride fought survival. At last, Versh raised his hand. The motion was final. Very well, we will propose a union, but the human must be chosen carefully. Far away on a human diplomatic station near neutral space, Ethan Cole stood by a window. He watched the stars drift slowly past, hands behind his back. Ethan was not tall. He was not strong by military standards. His brown hair was always a little messy, and his eyes carried a quiet, tired look. He had once been an engineer on colony ships before the war had taken his home station. Now he served as a minor diplomat. He listened more than he spoke. This made others underestimate him. Ambassador Lisa Morgan entered the room. Ethan, she said, we need to talk. He turned. Her face was serious. The Veleri Council has offered a peace proposal. Ethan nodded. Another ceasefire? No, something else. She paused. They want a marriage. Ethan blinked once. Then said nothing. You would marry a Veleri noblewoman. It would be symbolic, permanent. Binding. Ethan walked back to the window. Space felt very quiet. Do I have a choice, he asked. Lisa sighed. Officially, yes. Realistically, no. The War Council believes this could save millions of lives. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Images of burning stations and broken hulls passed through his mind. Who is she, he asked. Her name is Lyra Vesh. Veleri Council member, educated, calm, no known hatred toward humans. Ethan nodded slowly. Then I will meet her. The meeting was arranged on a neutral orbital station. No weapons were allowed. Both sides arrived with heavy guards anyway. Lyra walked through the white halls, her steps smooth and controlled. Inside, her thoughts were not calm. She had studied humans, but books were thin things compared to reality. She wondered what kind of male would agree to such a bond. A warrior, a politician, a fanatic. The door opened. Ethan stood and waited. He bowed his head slightly, unsure of Veleri custom. Lyra stopped. This was not what she expected. He was smaller than Veleri males. His posture was relaxed, not dominant. His eyes were steady, not wild. Lyra inclined her head. Ethan Cole, Lyra Vesh, he replied. They sat across from each other. I will speak plainly, Ethan said. I did not ask for this, but I will do it if it brings peace. Lyra studied his face. There was no pride in his voice, no hunger. I also did not ask for this, she said, but I chose it. That surprised him. Why, he asked. Because war teaches us nothing but loss. Ethan nodded. Then we agree on something already. Their talks lasted hours. They spoke of law, culture, daily life. Lyra asked careful questions. Ethan answered honestly, even when the truth made humans look fragile. He spoke of families spread across stars, of children raised in metal halls, of humans learning to adapt or die. Lyra listened. She began to see why humans endured. The agreement was signed 3 days later. The marriage would be public, binding, permanent unless both councils agreed otherwise. News spread like fire. Some humans called Ethan a traitor. Others called him a hero. Many were simply tired. Among the Velari, fear was louder. Rumors claimed humans would use the bond to strike. The ceremony was held on the station's central ring. Ethan wore a simple dark suit, no weapons, no armor. Lyra wore traditional Velari silk woven with living light. It shimmered softly. They stood side by side before the galaxy. When asked if he accepted the bond, Ethan spoke clearly. "I accept, not for power, not for control, but for peace." When Lyra spoke, her voice did not shake. "I accept, not because I trust humans fully, but because I believe trust must begin somewhere." The bond was sealed. No cheers followed, only silence. As they left the hall together, Lyra felt the weight of eyes upon them. Ethan leaned slightly toward her. "For what it is worth," he said quietly, "I will not hurt your people." Lyra looked at him. "For what it is worth," she replied, "I hope we never learn what happens if humans are pushed too far." Above them, the stars watched. The war had paused. Peace had taken its first fragile breath. Ethan Cole and Lyra Vesh arrived on the Velari capital world a few days after their marriage. The city was vast, stretching across a wide plateau with buildings that shimmered silver and blue under the twin suns. The streets were clean, empty of chaos, but full of silent watchers. Velari citizens paused to look at them, whispering behind folded hands. Some were curious, some fearful, some openly hostile. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze. He adjusted his simple tunic, feeling the strange, high-gravity pull on his muscles. His joints ached in ways that reminded him he was human. Humans were not built for Velari worlds, yet he moved steadily, determined not to appear weak. Lyra walked beside him, her calm presence a shield against the murmurs. Their home was an elegant tower in the center of the city. It was not a palace, but a carefully designed residence that blended Velari tradition with practical human needs. The hallways were tall and smooth, the rooms glowing with soft light that adjusted to the time of day. The technology was advanced, doors opened without touch, walls could shift shapes, and the air smelled faintly of metal and flowers. Lyra showed Ethan the room where he would sleep. It had a bed low to the floor, as humans preferred, and a window overlooking the city. She gestured toward the control panel on the wall. "You can adjust anything you like," she said. "Light, temperature, even sound." "The Velari will not mind." Ethan nodded, trying to hide the unease twisting in his stomach. He had lived in space stations and colonies, but this was different. Here, every step felt watched, every movement judged. He had to survive not only physically, but socially. Their first days were quiet. Ethan learned the schedule of the city, the customs of the Velari, and the unspoken rules that governed interactions. He observed the guards, the citizens, and the council members who occasionally passed through their neighborhood. He noticed subtle signs. A guard would glance at him longer than needed, a merchant would lower her voice when they approached, a child would stare too long before running away. He also discovered his own limits. The gravity was heavy, making his muscles burn after simple tasks. The air, though breathable, felt different. His body adjusted slowly, but Lyra did not complain, understanding the strain of human physiology. In the evenings, Lyra introduced him to Velari cuisine. Strange glowing fruits, spiced protein pastes, and liquids that shimmered in the light. Ethan tried to eat politely, though much of it was hard to stomach. He missed simple human meals, bread, meat, and fruit. Lyra noticed and quietly had some human food brought to him. It was her small act of care, one that went unnoticed by the city but felt comforting to him. They spoke often, more than required. Ethan told her about his life on the colonies, about his work as an engineer, and about small joys humans took for granted. Rain on a metal roof, the smell of bread baking, the sound of laughter in crowded rooms. Lyra listened, fascinated, and sometimes, for the first time, she laughed. It was soft, melodic, but filled with warmth. Despite their growing bond, Velari eyes remained on them. Some council members doubted Ethan's value. They expected him to fail, to be slow, weak, and incapable. Soldiers whispered that a human male could never survive here without guidance. Lyra ignored their doubts, but she could feel the tension, the undercurrent of suspicion. Ethan noticed it too. One evening, as they walked through the city's central plaza, a group of Veleri youth circled them. They made quiet jokes about human frailty. One tried to push Ethan, testing his reflexes. Ethan stepped aside calmly, his eyes steady. He said nothing, showing neither fear nor anger. The youths, frustrated, scattered. Lyra touched his arm lightly. "You must not show weakness," she whispered. "I do not think I can," he said with a small smile. That night, Ethan began to train. He went to the exercise room in their residence. It was simple by Veleri standards, some weights, a climbing wall, and mats on the floor. He moved slowly, building strength in ways Veleri did not expect. He trained quietly without showing off. Lyra sometimes watched from the doorway, admiring his focus. Humans, Ethan thought, survived by adapting, by learning, by enduring. He could not match Veleri in raw power, but he could prepare his body in secret, slowly, steadily. The city would never understand his methods, but he would need them. Lyra found herself talking to him more about politics and strategy. The council debated daily about the war, about human settlements, about resources. She explained their concerns, their fears, and their unspoken rules. Ethan listened carefully, asking simple questions that went to the heart of each issue. His questions were not naive. They were precise, cutting to truths that Veleri logic sometimes overlooked. Lyra realized that humans had a way of seeing the world differently, noticing what others ignored. One day, Lyra received a secret message. A third faction, unknown and aggressive, had begun movements near the outer colonies. The cruel, the message said. No one knew much about them. They were ruthless, fast, and heavily armed. They had attacked other species in the past, leaving entire fleets destroyed. The Veleri had not encountered them before. Lyra told Ethan quietly, "We must be ready," she said. They could reach our borders within weeks. Ethan nodded. His mind already began working. He asked for maps, for old schematics of the city's defenses, for any details about the outer fleets. Lyra provided what she could, amazed at his memory and focus. "You understand our systems faster than many Veleri officers," she said. He shrugged. "Humans are like that," he replied. "We learn by necessity." As the weeks passed, Ethan adapted further. He learned Veleri etiquette, customs, and language nuances. He practiced moving silently through halls, observing patrol patterns, and memorizing weak points in defenses. Lyra noticed the subtle strength emerging in him, the way he combined intelligence and endurance. She began to feel something unfamiliar, admiration mixed with worry. Admiration for his skill and endurance, worry because she did not know what he might be capable of if pushed too far. The city continued its usual rhythm. Merchants traded, children played, and citizens went about their lives. But beneath it, tension grew. Some Veleri citizens still whispered about the human male in their midst. Some watched his every move. Others wondered if he could survive or if he would break. Ethan, however, remained calm. He walked the streets with Lyra, learning faces, patterns, and the rhythms of daily life. He spoke to citizens politely, with quiet respect. He listened more than he spoke, and in doing so, he began to gain small trust little by little. At night, he trained again. He lifted weights far heavier than a human of his size should, tested his speed against machines, and practiced movements that would make Veleri soldiers sweat. He never boasted. He never sought attention. All he wanted was to prepare, to endure, and to understand what might come. Lyra watched him often and began to feel a new bond forming. It was not love yet. It was respect and something stronger, trust. She realized that this human male, quiet and unassuming, might be unlike any other being she had ever known. Then, one day, the first warning came. Scouts reported a small, cruel fleet approaching the outer colonies. It was fast, too fast for usual defenses. The Veleri Council panicked. Their weapons, advanced as they were, had never faced the cruel. Lyra and Ethan listened as the council debated, their voices tense, sharp. They argued over fleets, defenses, and possible evacuation plans. Panic was not usually part of Veleri thought, but fear had found them. Lyra looked at Ethan. "What can we do?" she asked quietly. Ethan did not answer immediately. He studied the data screens, the maps, and the schematics. He tapped a finger on one old, unused defense station. "This could work," he said, "but it is risky." Lyra raised her eyebrows. "The council will never approve something so old and dangerous." Ethan shrugged slightly. Sometimes risk is the only choice, she realized. And humans, she knew now, were willing to take risks no one else would. As the sun set behind the twin peaks of the capital city, Ethan prepared. He studied, planned, and moved silently through corridors of power and machine. Lyra stayed nearby, watching, uncertain of what would come next, but aware that the calm human beside her was quietly becoming something the Velari could never fully measure. The city slept under the twin suns, fading light, unaware of the storm approaching, unaware that the small human male married for peace might soon show a strength no Velari had ever seen. The warning alarms echoed through the Velari capital. The outer sensors had detected the cruel fleet. Hundreds of ships moving fast, weapons glowing with a strange red light. The council meeting room filled with tension. Velari leaders spoke quickly, their voices tight with fear. Strategies and defenses were discussed, but nothing seemed enough. The Cruel had attacked other empires before, leaving nothing behind. The Velari had never faced them directly. Lyra stood beside High Counselor Versh. She felt the familiar weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She glanced at Ethan, who remained calm, his hands folded behind his back. His quiet presence was strange in the chaos. She had seen panic in Velari leaders' eyes, but not in his. "We have prepared fleets," Versh said. "We can fight them, but losses will be high." Lyra shook her head. "Our weapons may not work. Their armor resists energy shields. Conventional weapons will fail." Versh frowned. "What do you propose?" "We need a plan they do not expect," she said. "One that does not rely on standard combat." Ethan stepped forward. He had not spoken yet, though council members often ignored him. His voice was calm. "There is an old defense station," he said, "unused, forgotten. Humans helped build it long ago. It can still function if we reactivate it." The council turned to him. "The station is not operational," High Counselor Versh said. "It would take months to prepare. We have hours." Ethan's eyes did not waver. "Not months," he said, "weeks. Maybe hours if we push the systems beyond safe limits." Silence followed. Many Velari officers whispered about human recklessness. One muttered, "Humans always underestimate danger." Lyra watched him. She had begun to understand humans. They endured in ways Velari could not imagine. She nodded slightly to him. "I will support this plan." Versh shook his head. "The council will not approve it. It is too risky." "We have no choice," Lyra said. "They are at our doorstep. If we wait for approval, the city will fall." The council reluctantly agreed, and Ethan began to work. He moved through the city quietly, gathering data, scanning old schematics, and mapping the defense station. Velari engineers followed, skeptical but curious. He explained each step clearly but simply. He did not rush. He did not panic. Meanwhile, Lyra coordinated evacuations. Citizens were confused, afraid. The warning lights shone red over the city. People packed belongings, moved to shelters, or prepared to fight. Velari guards tried to maintain order, but the fear was strong. Lyra's calm voice guided them, her presence steady like a beacon. Ethan entered the old station. It was silent and cold, filled with machinery covered in dust. Panels glowed dimly, screens flickered, and long corridors echoed with each step. He began to activate systems, bypassing old safety protocols. Sparks flew, warning lights blinked. Velari engineers hesitated. "Is it safe?" one asked. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said, "but safe is not the goal. Survival is." Hours passed. He worked tirelessly. Lyra visited often, bringing food and water, checking his progress. She was amazed at his focus. His mind moved through the systems like a river through rocks, finding paths no one else saw. Outside, the cruel fleet drew closer. Their ships cut through space with speed, glowing red against the darkness. Scouts reported attacks on outlying stations. Destruction moved fast, leaving nothing alive. Citizens in the capital watched with growing fear. Ethan finally activated the main system. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. Machinery groaned under the strain. He had pushed the station beyond normal limits. Velari engineers shouted, warning of overload. Ethan ignored them. His eyes were fixed on the screens, monitoring energy levels and output. Lyra held her breath. This was dangerous. No human had ever done this before. No Velari had seen such determination. Then the first cruel ships entered the capital's orbit. Their weapons fired. Explosions rocked outer buildings. The city shook. Velari defenses responded, but their weapons had little effect. Energy beams bounced off the cruel armor like sunlight on water. Ethan stayed at the control station. He guided the defense systems, activating energy pulses, redirecting power, and targeting cruel ships with precise strikes. The machines hummed, groaned, and strained under his commands. The cruel were hit, some ships damaged, others destroyed. Lyra watched from a nearby command center. The city shook from distant blasts, debris rained from outer towers. Citizens ran, screaming, or hid in shelters. She felt fear, but also a strange awe. The human male she had married was doing something no Velari had ever done. Suddenly, the station began to shake violently. Sparks flew from consoles. Panels cracked. Alarms screamed louder. Engineers panicked. Ethan's hands moved faster. He rerouted energy, stabilized critical systems, and focused on the attack. Sweat ran down his forehead. His body ached. His muscles burned from fatigue, but he did not stop. Lyra reached him. "Ethan," she shouted over the noise, "the station will collapse." "I know," he said calmly, "but it will hold long enough. Trust me." She stared at him. The calmness, the strength, it was unlike anything she had ever seen. He was small, human, but every action carried power and endurance she had never imagined. The cruel fleet advanced. Their weapons tore through outer defenses. Cities on the rim were burning. Velari soldiers fell, overwhelmed by speed and firepower. Citizens hid, praying, or ran. Ethan activated a final sequence. The old defense station unleashed a wave of energy that pulsed through space. Beams of concentrated force struck the cruel ships, tearing through their armor, causing explosions across the fleet. Ships disintegrated, caught in energy bursts they could not withstand. Outside, the city shook from the blast, but survived. The remaining cruel ships retreated, confused and damaged. For the first time, they met resistance unlike anything in their history. Lyra stood silently, watching the chaos subside. Her hands trembled slightly. She approached Ethan. His face was sweaty, pale, but determined. His body ached in ways she could not imagine. "You did it," she said softly. He shook his head. "Barely," he said. "It is not over. They will return." She realized then the truth. Humans did not fight like others. They endured. They survived. They used intelligence, strength, and will in ways no Velari could predict. The city was damaged. Fires burned in distant districts, and citizens were shaken. Yet life continued. Velari soldiers regrouped, some looking at Ethan with new respect. Engineers who had doubted him before now followed his lead without question. Lyra helped him step away from the control room. His movements were slow but steady. His face showed pain but also focus. "We need to plan for their next attack," he said. "They will not give up." She nodded, and for the first time she trusted fully in this human beside her. She realized that peace had been fragile, but now, with him, it had a chance. The city's lights flickered, smoke rising from damaged towers. Citizens began to emerge from shelters, seeing the aftermath. Some cried, some cheered, some were silent. They did not fully understand what had happened, but they sensed that something extraordinary had saved them. Ethan walked through the halls with Lyra. Soldiers followed at a distance. Citizens watched silently. No one dared speak. The human male who had married for peace had done more than survive. He had fought, endured, and unleashed a strength no Velari had ever seen. Lyra reached out and held his arm. "Do you think they will come back?" He nodded. "Yes, but we will be ready." And in that moment, the Velari capital understood that the quiet human male, underestimated by many, had become something more than anyone could imagine. He was not just a diplomat or a husband. He was a force of endurance, courage, and intelligence that could change the course of the galaxy. The first battle was over, but the war was far from done. And as the twin suns set over the city, Lyra knew the human beside her was preparing for what no one else could face. The city was quiet now, but only on the surface. Fires burned in distant districts, and smoke climbed into the sky like dark fingers. Velari soldiers patrolled the streets, checking buildings, helping citizens, and repairing defenses. Yet beneath the calm, tension ran deep. The cruel had retreated, but they were not gone. Their next attack could be worse, faster, stronger. Lyra Vesh walked beside Ethan Cole as they moved through the damaged streets. Her eyes scanned the buildings, the flickering lights, and the citizens who whispered and stared. She could still see fear, but also hope. Hope because of him. Because of the human who had changed the battle with courage and intelligence no Velari could understand. Ethan's steps were steady. His body ached, muscles burning from exertion, yet he moved with careful purpose. Every glance he gave the city was measured, every decision precise. He was exhausted but not broken. The humans had a strange way of enduring. Lyra understood that now more than ever. "We need to reinforce the outer districts," Ethan said. "Cruel scouts may return before the fleets arrive." Lyra nodded. "I have already sent squads to start evacuation drills and barricades. Civilians need to be moved if we detect them again. He stopped for a moment and examined a building that had partially collapsed from the previous battle. His hands traced the edge of the crumbled wall. This building can be stabilized, he said. We can use old support beams and energy fields to hold it. Lyra glanced at him. It is too dangerous, she said. Debris could collapse on you. He smiled faintly. Danger is part of survival. As they worked through the city, Velari soldiers watched silently. Some had doubts, some had fears. Yet every time Ethan moved, every time he issued orders, every time he acted with calm determination, they began to believe. He was small, human, fragile to the eye, but his endurance and intelligence gave him a presence no Velari warrior could match. In the command center, Ethan began planning defenses for the next attack. He studied maps of the city, outer stations, and the surrounding orbit. He made notes, marked weak points, and calculated energy outputs for the remaining defensive systems. Lyra assisted him, passing information, translating Velari data, and offering counsel advice. Together, they formed a plan combining human ingenuity and Velari technology. Lyra watched him carefully. He was methodical, thinking 10 steps ahead. He considered not just the machines and soldiers, but civilians, supplies, and even morale. She realized that humans survived through foresight, endurance, and adaptability. They used patience and planning as weapons as sharp as any blade. Outside, scouts reported cruel activity. Small ships moved toward the capital, testing defenses. Ethan acted quickly. He directed energy pulses from the old defense station, combined with newer Velari turrets. The cruel ships were hit repeatedly, damaged but not destroyed. We cannot hold them long this way, a Velari officer said. Ethan shook his head. We can delay them, enough to evacuate the civilians, enough to prepare for the main attack. Patience is a weapon. As the hours passed, Ethan continued moving among the soldiers, citizens, and engineers. He lifted debris with his hands that no Velari could move alone. He pulled people from falling buildings, carried supplies across streets damaged by explosions, and helped set up barricades. His endurance seemed limitless. Lyra noticed bruises forming on his arms, scratches on his face, but he did not slow. He pushed forward quietly, steadily, as if pain was nothing more than a passing thought. The first cruel attack fleet arrived. Red lights cut through space. Their ships fired upon the city. Explosions shook buildings. Civilians screamed. Velari defenses struggled. Energy beams bounced off cruel armor. Missiles detonated harmlessly against their ships. Ethan activated a secondary system in the old defense station. Machines roared, sparks flew, energy surged. The station itself seemed alive, pushing back against the cruel with controlled explosions and energy waves. Debris from their attacks was thrown back into space. One by one, cruel ships were damaged, some destroyed. Lyra watched from the command center. Her heart pounded. She had seen many battles, many disasters, but this was different. The human beside her moved among machines, soldiers, and citizens, acting with strength, endurance, and intelligence no Velari could match. He climbed to the top of a collapsed tower to direct energy beams manually. Sparks flew around him. The wind threatened to push him off the edge. His arms trembled, but he held the controls, steadying the beams. Soldiers below could only watch. The human male was risking his life in ways they could not comprehend. After hours of fighting, the cruel were pushed back. Their ships, though damaged, retreated from the city's orbit. The streets were in ruins. Fires still burned in distant areas. Citizens were exhausted, many injured but alive. Soldiers regrouped, tired but inspired. They whispered about the human who had saved them, a quiet male who moved with purpose, endurance, and strength unlike anything they had ever seen. Lyra approached Ethan. His hands were bruised, his clothes torn, and his body covered in sweat and dust. Yet his eyes were calm, focused, alive. "You are incredible," she said. "No Velari could have done what you just did." He shook his head. "I am just doing what is necessary," he said. "Humans survive by necessity. We endure, we fight. We think ahead, we do not stop when others would give up." Lyra looked at him closely. This was more than endurance, more than intelligence. He had unleashed something that no Velari had ever seen. A combination of will, strength, and quiet determination that could change the outcome of battles. They began moving through the city again, helping injured civilians, checking barricades, and reinforcing weak points. Soldiers followed silently, inspired. Citizens whispered, amazed and fearful at the same time. The human male married for peace had become a force no one could ignore. As night fell, the city lights flickered over the damaged streets. Fires burned in the distance. Smoke climbed into the sky, yet the people of the city were alive and hope remained. They knew the cruel would return, but now they had a plan. Now they had a human male who could endure what no Veleri could. Lyra stayed close to Ethan as they walked through the command center, overseeing preparations for the next attack. "I do not know if we can stop them entirely," she said quietly. He looked at her calm. "We can survive long enough. That is all we need. Survival gives us time. Time to prepare, time to adapt, time to fight back." She nodded, and with him here she believed it. The human beside her had endured the impossible, faced the enemy no Veleri could challenge, and pushed his body, mind, and spirit to limits they could not understand. He had shown her, and the city, a strength no Veleri had ever seen. And as they stood together in the fading light, she realized that the human male she had married for peace was no longer just a husband or a diplomat. He was a symbol, a force, and a shield for the city and for the galaxy. The war was far from over, but with him there was hope, endurance, and a strength that could change everything. The city had begun to recover from the first cruel attacks, but the scars remained. Towers were broken, streets littered with debris, and smoke still rose in distant districts. Citizens moved cautiously, some returning to rebuild, others remaining fearful. Veleri soldiers patrolled the streets, checking barricades and tending to wounded citizens. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet determination spread. The human male who had married for peace had shown a strength no Veleri had ever seen. Lyra Vesh walked beside Ethan Cole through the central plaza. She observed the citizens, some stared, some whispered, some bowed their heads in respect. She felt pride mixed with concern. The cruel would return, and the city needed every bit of preparation. Ethan's steps were steady. His body was bruised and tired from previous battles, yet his movements were calm and purposeful. He carried supplies, helped repair machinery, and gave instructions to soldiers and engineers. Every action showed focus and endurance. Lyra watched him closely, realizing that this quiet human male had become more than a diplomat. He was a force capable of shaping the outcome of war. "We need to reinforce outer stations," Ethan said. "The cruel will return and they will strike harder." Lyra nodded. "I have already ordered squads to evacuate civilians and strengthen defenses. But we also need plans for the main city." He studied the city layout. Weak points, supply lines, escape routes. Everything had to be prepared. Humans survived by seeing possibilities no one else considered. "We cannot predict everything," he said, "but we can prepare for most. Preparation is survival." As they worked, scouts reported small cruel attack groups moving toward the capital. These were fast ships, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Veleri soldiers scrambled to intercept, but Ethan acted faster. He directed energy fields from the old defense station, redirecting beams and powering turrets with precise timing. The small ships were damaged before they reached the city. Lyra followed him, impressed by his ability to move calmly in chaos. He climbed to control points in partially collapsed towers, adjusted energy beams manually, and coordinated defenses across multiple districts. His endurance amazed everyone. Veleri soldiers whispered among themselves, disbelief in their voices. The human male married for peace was not just surviving, he was leading, protecting, and outthinking them all. The main cruel fleet arrived in orbit later that day. Their red lights cut through space, a warning of destruction to come. The city braced for impact. Citizens hid, soldiers readied weapons, and the council watched anxiously. Yet Ethan moved calmly through the command center. He assessed, calculated, and acted. Lyra watched him issue instructions, adjust energy flows, and coordinate every weapon in the city. He lifted heavy machinery to reinforce weak points, carried injured soldiers to safety, and manually activated energy beams to strike the cruel ships. Every action was precise, every movement purposeful. The battle began. Explosions shook buildings. Debris fell into streets. Citizens screamed, but Ethan remained a steady presence. He carried supplies, guided soldiers, and fought alongside the machines. His endurance was extraordinary. Bruises, cuts, and exhaustion could not slow him. He moved faster and longer than any Veleri could, facing danger without hesitation. Lyra followed him, helping where she could, but mostly observing. She realized that humans survived differently. They endured not just with strength, but with intelligence, patience, and willpower. Ethan had shown that humans could fight in ways Valari had never imagined, combining physical endurance, tactical skill, and unshakable calm. The cruel were relentless. Their weapons tore through buildings, and soldiers fell in waves. Yet Ethan's coordination, planning, and quiet determination slowed their advance. He used every resource, every machine, every soldier in the city to maximum effect. Small, cruel ships were destroyed, larger ones forced to retreat. The city survived, battered but alive. After hours of fighting, the main fleet began to pull back. The energy outputs from the old defense station and reinforced turrets had damaged enough ships to force retreat. Citizens emerged cautiously from shelters, witnessing a victory they had not expected. Soldiers looked at Ethan with awe and respect. He had done what no Valari could. He had survived, endured, and protected the city against overwhelming odds. Lyra approached him as the battle ended. He was covered in sweat, dirt, and bruises, but his eyes were steady, calm, and focused. "You did it," she said softly. "The city, it survived." He shook his head. "Barely," he said. "We survived, not one. The cruel will return. We must be ready." She nodded, understanding. Humans did not fight for glory, they endured for survival. She realized then that the human beside her was no ordinary male. He was a shield, a force, a mind and body capable of feats no Valari could match. They moved through the streets together, checking barricades, helping the injured, and reinforcing weak points. Citizens whispered about him, amazed and fearful. The quiet male who had married for peace was now a legend in the making. Over the following days, the city began repairs. Fires were extinguished, debris cleared, and weak structures reinforced. Ethan worked tirelessly, planning, training soldiers, and preparing civilians. He taught them to endure, to survive, to use intelligence as a weapon. Soldiers followed his guidance without question. Citizens learned from his calm determination. Lyra stayed close, assisting and observing. She felt something new growing between them, trust, respect, and an unspoken bond forged in survival. She realized that love could grow from shared trials, from endurance, and from the courage to face impossible odds together. The council gathered again to assess the situation. Reports from scouts confirmed the cruel were regrouping, but the capital's defenses were stronger, better prepared, and coordinated under Ethan's guidance. The council bowed in respect, not out of fear, but because they understood his strength. No Valari could achieve what he had done. High Counselor Versh spoke privately to Lyra. "The human male, he is unlike anything we expected," he said. "His strength is not just physical, it is intelligence, endurance, and calm. The city owes him its survival." Lyra nodded. "I know," she said, "and the galaxy may need more than one human like him to survive the storms ahead." One evening, as the twin suns set, Lyra and Ethan walked through the central plaza. The city was quiet now, the fires extinguished, and citizens returning to daily life. Yet the scars remained, a reminder of what had occurred and a warning of what could come. "I never wanted this," Ethan said quietly. "Not the marriage, not the war, not the danger." Lyra looked at him. "But you endured it, and you protected more than just me. You protected the city, the people, and the future." He smiled faintly. "Humans survive by necessity. We endure, we fight. We do not stop when others would give up." She realized the truth. Humans did not seek war, they did not seek dominance. But when pushed, when survival demanded it, they unleashed a strength no other species could match. News traveled across the galaxy. Other empires, other species began to understand. Humans were not weak. They were not to be underestimated. They endured. They survived. And when necessary, they could unleash a force no one else could comprehend. Lyra and Ethan remained together, walking through streets slowly rebuilding. They spoke quietly, sharing plans, thoughts, and hopes. The city was alive, the citizens safe, and the soldiers inspired. Yet the shadow of the cruel remained in the distance, a reminder that vigilance and endurance were essential. "I do not want fame," Ethan said one evening. "I only want peace." Lyra smiled. "And now maybe we have a chance. The city survived. The people lived. And the galaxy has learned something important. Humans endure when others cannot." As the twin suns set behind distant mountains, the city quiet but alive, Lyra understood that peace was fragile, but with Ethan beside her, there was hope. Strength, endurance, and calm could protect more than walls or weapons. The human male she had married for peace had become more than a husband or diplomat. He was a symbol, a force, and a shield for the galaxy. and the cruel, wherever they were, would soon learn the same truth. Humans do not give up, and when pushed, they endure, survive, and fight with a strength no alien had ever seen. The stars above the city glimmered quietly, as if witnessing the birth of a new legend, a human who could endure, who could survive, and who could change the course of the galaxy forever.